strikes back.
Hello, Axilla here for FailHouse Gaming, and this is Tutorial Tuesday number 5. Now again, I've not managed to pin down Critical Hit in order to get some recording done with him yet. So I'm going to be doing 9 videos, not necessarily following each other, but I do have 9 Tutorial Tuesdays planned where I cover each class in as much detail as I can in about 25 minutes for each video. So I'm going to be doing in alphabetical order. So firstly we've got the Druid, and roughly I'm going to go over every single card. I'm going to go over the hero power in quite a bit of detail. Then I'm going to cover good class combos, finishing up with the wombo combo of the class, and then lastly showing you an example of a tournament winning deck of that class, or a high finishing tournament deck of that class that happened as recently as I can find. So yeah, let's get into it. So like I said, starting with Druid for this Tutorial Tuesday. Druid as a class functions very similarly to how it does in WoW. It's very versatile. It basically goes between, it has a lot of all cards, and these basically bounce between cat form or bear form. Examples of this, for example, will be Mark of Nature, 4 attack or 4 health and taunt. Cat form being attack and aggression, bear form being health and defense, so taunt. So yeah, big themes of Druid really are versatility in its cards. Most of Druid's cards, or a lot of Druid cards, sorry, can do multiple things, and that's a big theme with Druid. It's all about the versatility. Another big theme with Druid is ramp. They're the only class that can artificially give themselves extra mana. For example, with Innovate being one of the better cards in the game, just through its potential really. Wild Growth just straight up giving you an extra mana crystal, and Nourish giving you 2 more. Lots of versatility, lots of ways to ramp up in order to achieve more per turn than your opponents. Druid's ramp ability is also allowed to get to the late game quite quickly, and the late game is mostly where Druids are considered to shine. However, the deck I'm going to be showing you is an early to mid-range Druid deck which uses ramp spells in order to do more early to mid-range things in a given turn. So it doesn't really get to the late game, it just gives itself more mana in order to do more things, to do what other decks do, since it uses a lot of the good metagame cards which I described last video, but it uses its ramp spells in order to do more of those good things sooner. So stuff that basically any deck can do, the Druid deck I'm going to be showing you does them sooner. So yeah, Druid overall themes about versatility. It's either attack or defense, as well as the ability to get to the late game, or to get to having an advantage as far as mana goes over your opponent. Firstly, we have Innovate. Now, Druid is the only class that can actively increase the amount of mana they have in a given turn by simply giving themselves more mana crystals. Innovate is the first example of this. For a turn, you gain 2 full mana crystals. Quite simple. Next card is Moonfire. This is 0 mana to deal 1 damage. Not all that remarkable. Next up's Claw. Now this is 1 mana to give your hero +2/+2 effectively. Gives you 2 armor and 2 attack. Very, very useful for early game removal. Deals with things like Fairy Dragon, Knife Juggler, etc. Naturalize is an interesting one. It is 1 mana to simply destroy a minion. So it goes through things like Divine Shield, etc. But you cause your opponent to draw 2 cards. Very, very risky, especially in the earlier stages of the game. Next up is Savagery. It's 1 mana to deal damage equal to your hero's attack to a minion, so it combos well with Claw. Next up is Mark of the Wild. This is 2 mana to give a minion taunt and +2/+2. Can be very useful in situations, as well as keeping your squishier minions alive. Now we have Power of the Wild. This is the first Ore card I'm showing you for Druid. It's 2 mana to give your minions +1/+1 or summon a 3/2 Panther. Useful if you have a lot of minions out to buff them all, or to give yourself a minion if you don't have any and it's early on in the game. Next is Wild Growth. This is another example of Druid's ramp ability. It is 2 mana to gain an empty mana crystal, so you can artificially bloat your mana source for the next turn. If you play this on turn 2, by the time your next turn comes around, you'll have 4 mana, so you can turn 3 a Chillwind Jetty, for example. Now we have Wrath. It's done by Critical Hits favourite artist, Raymond Swanland. It's 2 mana for the next Ore card. It's deal 3 damage to a minion, or 1 damage, and draw a card. Versatile removal. Healing Touch is next. It's 3 mana to restore 8 health, very simple. Next, Ore card, Mark of Nature. It's 3 mana to give a minion +4 attack or +4 health and taunt, so useful for dealing that little bit of extra damage or for having a much more durable creature or surviving. Up next is Savage Roar. It's 3 mana to give your characters +2 attack this turn. This does include your hero, so you can do it for extra creature removal and then bash them in the face a lot. Next up is Bite. It's an extension of Claw really. It's 4 mana to give your hero +4/+4. Again, more creature removal, very utilitous. Now we have Soul of the Forest. This is 4 mana to give your minions Death Rattle, summon a 2/2 Treant. Very useful to dissuade your opponents from killing your minions or to replenish your field if that is their plan. Next is Swipe, Druid's first board clearer. It's 4 mana to deal 4 damage to an enemy and 1 damage to all other enemies. This includes their hero. With some spell power, this can be quite a potent ability. Next we have Keeper of the Grove. It's a 4 mana 2/4 all minion. Its battle cry is choose 1, deal 2 damage or silence a minion. So if it's a very, very large thing with taunt, you can just silence it, or if it's, for example, a Knife Juggler or a Fairy Dragon, you can just kill it. Next we have Druid's final ramp ability. It's Nourish, 5 mana to gain 2 mana crystals or draw 3 cards. You can get this out on turn 1 and you'll still have 2 mana crystals since they're not empty mana crystals. Next up we have Starfall. It's 5 mana to either deal 5 damage to a minion or 2 damage to all enemy minions. It's either a single target removal or a board clear. Again, versatility. Next up is Druid of the Claw. It's another all minion. 5 mana for a 4/4 which you can either give charge or +2 health and taunt. Very, very versatile card. Moving on to the 6 mana cards, we have Force of Nature. It's 6 mana to summon 3 2/2 Treants with charge that die at the end of the turn. If you combo this with Soul of the Forest for 10 mana, it can be quite a potent combination. Starfire next is 6 mana to deal 5 damage to any target, and you get to draw a card. 4 cards left, all big minions now. We have Ancient of Lore, 7 mana for a 5/5, and you can either draw 2 cards or restore 5 health, so either help you stay in the game or help you draw into what you need to win. Next is Ancient of War. It's 7 mana again for a 5/5. You can either give it +5 health and taunt or +5 attack. Next up is Ironbark Protector. It's 8 mana for an 8/8 with taunt. Very simple, very good card. And lastly, but by no means least, is the legendary Cenarius. It's 9 mana for a 5/8, and you can either give all of your other minions +2/+2, or you can summon 2 2/2 Treants with taunt. Now, I'm on this screen again because I want to focus on the Druid's hero power, Shapeshift. It's obviously 2 mana like every hero power, but it gives your hero +1/+1. It gives it 1 armor and 1 attack. I mean, that's quite versatile because you can take out a 1/1 without taking any damage, similarly to the Mage's ability. But, if you think about it, maybe slightly better than the Rogue's. However, the Rogue you do get 2 uses out of, so again, you know, it's very versatile. So if I just go straight into it, things like Claw synergize well with your hero power. For 3 mana, you are doing 3 damage and have 3 health, and have 3 armor. The armor will stack, so if you're just beating them down in the face, you will get more and more armor. And other things like Bite, giving your hero +4/+4, being able to take out those larger minions. For 6 mana, you can deal 5 damage, which kills things like Sen'jin Shieldmaster and Chillwind Jetty, and you won't take any damage from doing so. Versatile in the fact that it will gain you health overall with armor if you don't lose the armor, and if you do lose the armor, you've lost less health. So Druids can be very good, and their main way of dealing with creatures and controlling the board is through their hero and their hero power, as well as a couple of their spells. That's why their spells don't seem all that strong, because their hero power can just do so much for them. So I just want to emphasize that the hero power is really good and isn't to be taken lightly, and is one of the better hero powers in the game in my opinion. Completely balanced. I think all hero powers are basically completely balanced, but as far as utility goes, Druids is way up there. Now, I'm going to move on to little combos that Druids can do. I've gone on to the 2 mana only section for the first combo I'm going to describe, which is Nourish. Basically, if you get out a Nourish quite quickly with Wild Growth, so say you turn 1 coin into a Wild Growth, or you just turn 2 Wild Growth, turn 3 you have 4 mana, so you can either coin into Nourish, or you can wait another turn. You can get a turn 3 or 4 Nourish out relatively regularly, and then on that turn you still have 2 mana crystals, so you can do, for example, another Wild Growth. If you've not done 2, you can Wrath something. If you move on to the neutral minions, you can destroy a weapon, you can get a fairy dragon out, and you can even just throw down a novice engineer to get some more card draw. There are so many things that you can do with the Nourish 2 mana, and the fact that it's 2 full mana crystals is really good, and those stay permanently, so it's very useful. The next combo I'm going to cover is Swipe with spell damage. Now, Swipe with Kobold Geomancer or Blood Mage Thalnos is 6 mana, and you deal 5 damage to an enemy and 2 damage to all other enemies. This is really good, and I'm using this as a combo, even though it seems kind of like a silly combo, just like, well, anything with spell power combos, but I'm using this as a combo example to simply show how bad I think Starfall is as a card. Now, don't get me wrong, no card is bad in the right circumstance. Every single card has a use and is good in the right circumstance. But Starfall, compared to Swipe plus a spell damage, is just bad, because you get both Starfall effects for 1 extra mana. Effectively, that's why I've got Blood Mage Thalnos and Kobold Geomancer selected up here. That's 6 mana, and you get both Starfall effects. If you wanted both Starfall effects and you had Starfall, that would cost you 10 mana. I mean, yes, with 1 spell power, Starfall does 3 damage to all minions, but that's 7 mana. That's again adding more mana to it. It's just, it's a good card, but compared to the other Druid cards, not that great. I also want to, I'll put that up there actually, bring your attention to Starfall compared to Starfire. Now, Starfall deals 5 damage to a minion for 5 mana. For 6 mana, Starfire deals 5 damage to anything, and you get to draw a card. So again, that 1 extra mana, you have the Starfall effect, better Starfall effect in fact, because you get to deal that 5 damage to anything, and you get to draw a card, so you don't lose any card advantage in doing so. So again, Starfall, in my opinion, isn't necessarily the best card. Not a bad card, but compared to the other Druid spells, not necessarily a good card. Next combo I'm going to cover is Soul of the Forest and Force of Nature. Now, this is 10 mana, but you summon 3 2/2 treants with charge that die at the end of the turn. So if you summon 3 2/2 treants with charge, that's obviously great. You can attack with all of them, either suicide them so that they die and you get to kill some stuff, or you just hit them for 6 in the face. That combo with Soul of the Forest means that if they die by you slamming them into a big taunt, or they die at the end of the turn, you still keep your 2/2 treant. That's actually pretty good. Also, if you consider comboing that, I forgot to put this in the list, but if you consider comboing that there with, where is it? There we go, Cult Master. Whenever one of your minions dies, you get to draw a card. That's another decent combo right there. Force of Nature plus Cult Master. Force of Nature, deal all the damage you need to the things you need to with their charge effect, and then they all die and you get to draw 3 cards. Another really good combo for 10 mana. Second to last main combo I'm going to cover is Malygos and Moonfire. Now, Malygos is a very kind of gimmicky legendary. I find hilarious. If you manage to get a Malygos out and he survives for a turn, you can do a lot of things. You can double fireball somebody for 18. I mean, that's not even, sorry, not for 18, for 22. That's really good. And the reason why this is, he's kind of gimmicky because he has to survive a turn. However, with Druid, you can Malagos and then double Moonfire, and that's 12 damage to, sorry, not 12 damage, that's 12 damage to anything of your choice. It's a little combo, just food for thought. I had a Druid deck which focused on the Malagos Moonfire combo, and it was probably a terrible deck. It didn't win many games, but when you went, okay, Malagos double Moonfire, it felt good. I'm not gonna lie, it felt like the deck was a success. The last combo I'm going to cover is the Wombo combo, and I'm going to be doing one of these for every single class, and it's going to be the most amount of damage that that class can do in a single turn. For Druids, it's this. This relies on having the coin as well to have enough mana, but it deals a total of 26 damage in a single turn. So, you Force of Nature, double Innovate, Force of Nature again, to get 6 2/2 treants with charge. You then use the coin to Savage Roar, turn them all into 4 2 treants with charge, and hit them in the face with every single one of them. That deals a grand total of 24 damage, and Savage Roar gives your hero +2 attack as well this turn for the extra 2 damage, bringing the total up to 26. It's very, very gimmicky, probably never happen in the game, but if it does and you win with it, it'd be quite funny. Lastly, what I'm going to show you is the tournament winning Druid deck, which I briefly mentioned. This won a daily tournament on the 21st of November, and it was a tournament format which was the same format as Blizzard's, where you have 3 decks, where you submit the deck list, you have your 3 decks, and if you lose, you use a different deck. This deck that this guy used didn't drop a single game. He won every single game with his Druid deck. He just cleared up. It's overall a good deck. There doesn't seem to be anything particularly special or gimmicky about it, but it uses Druid's ramp abilities in order to get out what good cards other decks use. It uses those ramp abilities in order to get that sort of stuff out quicker, so the good cards can be good earlier. Quite an interesting concept to do this to a Druid deck, and it works really well. So yeah, firstly you have double Innovate. Let's look at the mana curve. It focuses mostly on the 2s to 4s, but yeah, you got double Innovate in order to get out whatever you want as quick as you can. Wild Growths, ramp up those mana crystals. Wraths, because it's probably Druid's best removal in my opinion. It doesn't deal with the biggest things, but it's just very versatile. You can deal with lots of things with it. Fairy Dragon, difficult target to take out. Novice Engineers for some card draw, since Druid doesn't have that much other than Wrath. Harvest Golems, very, very good and very, very high value minion. I did forget this in my last video, but there is my description of it in the comment section, because I did forget it, and I'm sorry for that mistake. Shattersunk Cleric, again buffing things like Fairy Dragons, very, very good. Swipes. Interestingly, this deck doesn't run something like a Blood Mage Thalnos, but it doesn't matter because Swipe is still such a good card, very, very good board clear. Chillwind Yetis, fantastic. Like, I love seeing Chillwind Yetis because they're a basic card, and they've been established as one of the best basic cards, but you don't actually see that many over like class specific minions, and Chillwind Yeti just does so much work in this deck. Dark Iron Dwarfs, again for buffing those minions. Defender of Argus, kind of a staple. Only got one of on both of them. One of on the Defender of Argus for mostly if you're against like aggro decks and stuff. Very useful for the taunt, as well as the +1/+1 to both minions that it gives a taunt to, or just the one minion if you so wish. And Dark Iron Dwarfs, really good for, well, rather, singular Dark Iron Dwarf is used kind of as extra removal. It's 4 mana for a 4/4, which is decent, but you can use it as extra removal if you give the +2 attack to a Harvest Golem or a Novice Engineer, something like that. It's very good. Not 2 of each, because they both serve different purposes, and the 1 of on each gives just enough balance to, you know, it gives just enough of what they need from each of them to balance the deck out perfectly. Keeper of the Grove, great card, love it. 2 damage or silence a minion, you can innovate that out really quickly. Just lots of utility there. It means you don't have to have something like a Spellbreaker, which only silences a minion, as well as a spellbreaker dies more easily. It does have more attack, but this one you can just deal 2 damage, and that can sometimes, or quite often, be the better option. Singular Nourish. You can either use it to, well, if you're kind of below 7 mana crystals, use it to gain the extra mana crystals, unless you have no cards. Otherwise, it's mostly used for its card draw effect, but the fact that if you get it on turn 5 or 6, or even earlier with your Innovates and your Wild Growths, if you nourish into those extra mana crystals, you're going to be being able to do a lot more than your opponent each turn. Azure Drake, just one of, extra card draw and the extra spell damage. It's 5 mana for the 4/4. It's just such a good card. I mean, you draw a card straight away, so it does something the turn you bring it out. Also, that in combination with the swipe can make the swipe quite potent. Only the 1 spell power minion, but the fact that it's mostly there because it draws you a card. Very, 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 very good card. I can't really overstate Azure Drake enough. Druid of the Claw, one of the best Druid cards. Its versatility makes me love it so much. It's 5 mana for a 4/4 like Azure Drake with charge. So you can have an Azure, so you can have a 4/4 with charge. It's fantastic. Or if you're really suffering the beats and you're gonna die, just give it +2 and taunt. Again, it doesn't die to priest spells. Basically, none of these die to priest spells. They all sit at this 4 damage there. Chillwind Yeti, Dark Iron Dwarf, Keeper of the Grove doesn't really matter. Azure Drakes and Druid of the Claw, Argent Commanders as well. Sits at that 4 damage, and with 6 health, only really dies to big removal spells like Assassinate or a Fireball. A Singular Starfire. Now, this is just to deal with those big things that you can't deal with things like Swipe, your Hero Power, or Wrath. It's quite it's a mid-range aggro deck, really. It is able to get out all the mid-range minions and all the mid-range spells and stuff earlier because of the Druid's ramp ability. And so you don't really want to be controlling that much. You want to set the pace of the game with this deck, and that's why it's only got the 1 big kind of removal spell of the Starfire, and that also draws your card, so again you don't lose any card advantage. Double Argent Commander, they function as removal. Best 6-drop in the game. There's not really much more I can say about that. I've gone through this card in my last video, so yeah. And then finally, to top it all off, a singular legendary or in the form of Ragnaros the Firelord. He's just really good. If they silence him, obviously you have the 8/8 to attack with. You can silence him with Keeper of the Grove if you really want to. But other than that, he'll do stuff, and you have the chance to ramp up to him really quickly. Like I said, you can turn 3 him with double Innovate in the coin. Very, very scary. Not even that, you can just double Innovate and with a Wild Growth on turn 2. If you get Ragnaros out on turn 3, your opponent's mostly scuppered. So yeah, that's the deck. It won a tournament on 21st November. Very good Druid deck. I think it was constructed by a guy called Skip. He's a really nice guy, really friendly. And I'm sure he would be happy to answer any questions if you find out how to get in contact with him. I will hopefully do that and put some links in the description, but if not, I'm sorry. So yeah, thanks for watching. I've been Axilla for FailHouse Gaming, and this has been Tutorial Tuesday number 5. Next week, I'll either be covering another class, or I would have managed to pin down Critical Hit in order to get some filming done with him for the other topics that I've said that I'm hopefully going to cover. So again, thanks for watching, and until next time.